First song I ever wrote for Paul Dec, this had to be 1958. And my buddy Jerry Dexter over at Shiloh Records couldn't stop going on about this kid that he'd met in Philadelphia on 17th Street. Number just kind of stuck in my head.
Sweetheart, 17, be my beauty queen. Won't you let me be by your side? Or won't you let me be your 17 guy? Sweetheart, 17, sweetheart, 17.
I loved them all. I did. There was Sweetheart, 17, 17 Fever, and I've got 17 Dreams.
Sweetheart 17. To me, I put that on, and I sing it to my wife. Still, it's a very romantic song. We put it on in the house. She's 71. I switch the letters around, and I sing Sweetheart 71 to her, and we just dance. It's like a commercial for Centrum Silver.
That was absolutely my first #1 hit. That was my first chart success of any kind, and obviously the same was true for Paul. I had been writing songs for 7-8 years at that point, and I had written a couple of songs for Elvis Presley, and he actually hand-delivered those songs back to my house with some very strong, almost threatening words, but that was kind of exciting because I got to meet Elvis Presley.
I had collected, some of Paul's records and stuff when I was in high school, and I really liked his music and stuff, and I felt, 17 had some kind of mysterious thing to it, and it wasn't until later that I got into my own religion and Judaism and realized that 18 was the spiritual number. 17 really didn't mean much.
He did that novelty piece called 17 Wagon Trains. Oh, he was a genius.
Along the lonesome prairie, there rode 1,000 men, too tired to continue, too tired to defend. And as the food was eaten up, the men cried out in vain, hang the man who brought along 17 wagon trains. 17 wagon trains.
Wagon trains, 17 wagon trains. I actually went on a wagon train trip because of that song when I was 12.
I got to see him outside of the studio. And I ran up to him and I said, Mr. Decca, just if I could have a moment, and you wouldn't believe it. Everyone said no. Mr. Decca's got to work. And he said, well, I've got time for my fans. What is your name and what would you like me to write on it? Just a gentleman, just such a gentleman right from the top.
Yes, but Paul was getting restless. By 1961, folk singers were everywhere. If I had something, I'd whatever in the thing. And I think that Paul wanted to expand and write his own songs, generate his own catalog.
Well, the times had been changing. It wasn't as early Bobby Fabian kind of music happening anymore. And I think Paul was feeling a little left behind, though he really liked going to the sessions and listening to all the groups and stuff.
I said, that's fine, but just don't folk up your career. Folk up your career. He didn't know at the time what I was saying with that. Well, he found out. It was a prescient comment that I had made, folk it up. Now everybody's saying it.
He didn't want to meet the world on its terms. He wanted the world to meet him on his terms. I mean, you remember Bob Dylan's Positively 4th Street, I mean, with Paul, he was seriously thinking doing Negatively 17th Street. He really seemed to be exploring in the wrong directions, if you ask me. But
How many times must a girl have gonna fail, wondering if she's waist deep in a dream? Remember the world is not 16, babe. Remember the world is not 16. Not 16.
Who would have expected that he would change numbers like that? Well, I didn't.
That was Paul Decca's defining moment. He never had sung about the number 16 before. And except there was a demo that we scrapped called 16 Wagon Trains. 16 wagon trains going across the western plains with the green prairie grass and red blood stains as the westward expansion goes forward. I can't remember it, but there's a reason we scrapped it.
The only person of this generation who is even remotely at Paul's level, it would be Rick James. Because of the sensitivity, the ability to turn a phrase, his intimate knowledge of the feminine, the female mindset.
Well, after he did The World Is Not 16, he did 15 and a changin', and then he did my absolute favorite, Talkin' 14 Blues. Talkin' 14 Blues. But it was after that point that things started to get a little...
Weird. He was getting weird. He presented me with his next single, You're 13. I said, Paul, do you know how hard it's going to be to get radio to play a single, a love song entitled You're 13? That's why I added the question mark and the exclamation point at the end. Because to my mind, there is a large difference between You're 13 and You're 13? Whoa! I should have put the whoa on after the exclamation point.
Paul was not sick, all right? Paul was not depraved. Paul was not a pervert, despite what people say. Paul was just a guy who glorified youth. I mean, you know, the 1950s, 60s, they were a time of youth celebration, and he just found a way to express it. And that, you know, that's why he wrote songs like I Adore You, My Little 12, and Happy Birthday, Sweet, Sweet 11. Those were good songs. But that last Sullivan appearance, that was the beginning of the end for Paul.
Hey, nine. Hey, hey, nine. Hey, nine.
It's like America had a big meeting where they said, hey, we don't like Paul Dec anymore, do we? No! And they made that known to him in no uncertain terms. And it broke his heart and broke him.
There was something sad in his eyes at that time. I mean, I remember seeing him on television, and he was this, really vibrant, performing artist. I said, you really should spend some time in, Coconut Groves at that time, where John Sebastian and Lovin' Spoonful were, writing songs, and, he'd go down there and try and hang out with John Sebastian and the Spoonful, and he'd call me up and he'd say, Sebastian just won't let me in the house. Can you do something?
The last time I saw Paul was actually at a songwriters convention. This was in 1976, and I was going in, and he was running out. And there were some mothers there, and
No, I have not talked to him in 20 years. I have nothing against the man. To tell you the truth, I feel sorry for the guy.
I feel bad for him. I have tried to send letters to him. He's got a lawyer named Herb Tyler in Florida, and I do send letters now and then, which I don't know if he reads, but I don't know. I can't help but think that he's happy.
The sad part is that after he broke through, he just wanted to be left alone.
in the end, I guess you could say Paul got his wish.
Sweetheart, 17, be my beauty queen. Won't you let me 1,000 men, too tired to continue, too tired to defend. And as the food was eaten up, the men cried out in vain, hang the man who brought along 17 wagon train. 17 wagon train. How many times must a girl have gonna fail, wondering if she's waist deep in a dream? Remember, the world is not 16, babe. Remember, the world is not 16. 15 and a changin', 15 and a changin', 15 rearranging, 15 rearranging, 15.
So after all this time, if you were to see Paul Dec today, what would you say to him?
Well, I would ask him for my jacket back.